I need to start off by saying my name is Shauna Dunn, and this workshop is the happiest homeschool on earth. And it's really homeschooly, just as an aside, so if you're not here for homeschool information, then I'm okay if you walk. All right, now I'm going to start. So in 1934, Walt Disney decided that making short feature films, or short films, weren't enough. And he decided he wanted to use this new technology and make a full-length feature film using cell animation. And he got a lot of flack for it. His brother Roy tried to talk him out of it. His wife said she didn't think it was a good idea. The media called it Disney's folly. And he just really got a lot of negative feedback. But he knew it was the right thing, and he kept working at it. And he felt in his heart that it was the right thing to do. When our family first decided to homeschool, we experienced the same thing. We knew that it was the right thing to do, but we got a lot of negative feedback from friends and family. I have a sister who's a principal at a public school, and she really had a lot to tell me about this choice. Well, Walt Disney decided to go ahead and make the movie anyway. And the movie that he made was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Well, the success of that movie was phenomenal. He made it $8 million, which at that point in time was the highest grossing film in history. His revenues quadrupled any of the other films made in that year. He won an Oscar for, or is it Oscar or Grammy? I always get those mixed up. An Oscar for the film, and it's been released 11 times, re-released in theaters 11 times since then, and still to this date, it's one of the highest grossing films in history. Walt Disney was successful beyond his imagination. Well, maybe not his imagination, but he was wildly successful. And he shared his formula for success. He said, somehow, I can't believe there are any heights that can't be scaled by a man who knows the secret of making dreams come true. This special secret, it seems to me, can be summarized in 4 C's. They are curiosity, confidence, courage, and constancy. So today when we talk about these 4 aspects of success, these 4 C's, curiosity, we're going to talk about encouraging a love of learning. When we speak about confidence, we'll talk about gospel teaching in the home and how that can aid your children's confidence. When we talk about courage, we'll talk about family, culture, and identity and unconditional love. And under constancy, we'll talk about schedules and systems. Curiosity, oh, this really has cute Disney font stuff, but it doesn't now. So just imagine in your mind it's kind of written in Walt Disney script. It's really cute. All right. So first we're going to talk about curiosity. Elder David Bednar said, "You and I are here on earth to prepare for eternity, to learn how to learn things that are temporarily important and eternally essential, and to assist others in learning wisdom and truth." That's what we're here for. I guess it's been years now, ago, I had a homeschool panel at my house. It was made up of 18 and 19-year-old youth who had been homeschooled. And we had a panel of those youth there, and they each took a moment of time to introduce themselves and talk about how their homeschooling experience, what kind of philosophy and approach that their parents had used. And then we just opened it up for questions from the homeschooling community. And one recurring theme through that was love of learning, having those children as they grew up really have a love of learning was the key to their success. Learning, when I talk about love of learning, I'm talking about excitement to discover new things. So, and it's kind of easy to see in children, learning to love learning equips us for an ever-changing and unpredictable future. So that just seems, just as my homeschool panel talked about love of learning as the key to success, that quote too says that we really do have an unpredictable and changeable world. And if we love learning and we know how to learn, then we'll be prepared for the changes that are coming to us. So, but love of learning can be sneaky. When in the littlest one, in your littlest children, it's kind of easy to see. It's those bright, shining eyes, and they're excited about things. As they get older, it's kind of more difficult to see. So I'm going to share an experience. I have a daughter who's 15, and she loves to dance, and that's pretty much what she spends her time doing. Now, when she was spending all this time dancing, I was really concerned that she was spending all this time dancing and when she could, and in my opinion, ought to be studying. And my husband shared a story. He has all of these, he calls them the Brent Dunn theories. Oh, I have a Brent Dunn theory. And when we first got married, I would say, what book did you read that out of? Because he was just making these things up. Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know which, they almost always are true, and then later on research comes out and support his Brent Dunn theory. And anyway, so he has this Brent Dunn theory, he calls it the excellence factor. And he had a brother in high school who was very into football, lived for football from the time he was 8 years old till the time he was 18 years old, and cared about little else. Well, his parents, and Brent is is very much a mentor to this brother, just encouraged him to be the best he could be at football, and to be excellent. And then one day, towards the end of his junior year, I believe it was, he figured out that he was excellent in football, and he could be excellent in other things too. And so it just had this spillover effect. And as I was studying this, and so Brent shared that with me and said, let's just encourage her to be excellent at what she does and excellent in dance. And then later I found Dr. Sears calls it the carryover principle, and it's the exact same thing, and there's all this research that backs it up, and his Brent Dunn theory is true. Anyway, so in my experience, I was praying. I just didn't feel like she loved learning. She didn't want to do any of the schooling that I was trying to get her to do, and she just not necessarily had a bad attitude, but she didn't have an excitement and a love for learning. And I just kept praying about it. Oh, Heavenly Father, please help me to help her love learning. And then one day I had this amazing aha experience, and the Lord told me, it's all learning. She loves learning. What are you talking about? And I started thinking about it. And she taught herself how to crochet, and she's a left-handed person, so she had to learn it backwards from what she was learning on YouTube. And she found an online ASL course, American Sign Language, and she was going through that and teaching herself American Sign Language. She's practicing her cello for an hour to an hour and a half every day. She just finished her Young Women Recognition Award. She's studying dance, vocal tech, and drama at Pioneer Charter High School, and really loving that. And she was taking a Shakespeare class, and she read 17 Shakespeare plays in 2.5 weeks. And I realized, oh, maybe she does love learning. Okay, so then I went back to the Lord and I said, okay, I'm changing it. I need help to help her love math and science, because it's not okay, she loves learning. But it was kind of sneaky. I wasn't seeing what she was doing as love of learning. And as you may have guessed, we're a dance family, and she does an awful lot of dance, more than I think she ought to. But I've been to several Cougarettes concerts and recitals, and through the years, and this past year, she was really excited to see that she could she's only 15, but she could pretty much do everything that they were doing. And she started talking about maybe she'd want to be a Cougarette someday, and I got really excited. And I said, oh yes, that would be really, really great. What do we need to work on? And she does need a little bit more gymnastics. She needs to get a back handspring and that sort of thing, really solid. But, and she looked at me and said, Mom, wow, you're encouraging me in dance. That's amazing. And okay, this is a total side note, but I was like, what? Are you kidding me? What is your example or your definition of encouraging? I totally teach ballet and tap so that she can take unlimited classes. I have never missed a performance. I drive her all over the valley. And she says, oh, you're encouraging me in dance. Wow. And then the truth came out, and I was like, well, what I'm really excited about is the ACT score you have to get in order to get into BYU. And this is what you'll need to do to be able to do that. You'll have to study math and science. But the result of that was she said, oh, okay. And she has been really not fabulous, but at least positive about doing those things. So, and I think these are the things that helped her get to that point. When you encourage a love of learning, you create a learning environment, something that encourages discovery of new things. You have to remember, you are the expert in your own home, and the Lord will bless you with knowledge of what you need to do and what you can do to inspire your children to love learning and then to do the work that it takes to get a really great education and making it meaningful. Once she saw no purpose for studying math and science, and once there was a reason, okay, I can do that. So there's a parents magazine, or parenting magazine, I can't remember which, but they have a column called It Worked For Me. So I'm going to share a lot of things that have worked for me to create a love of learning environment in my homeschool. Just yesterday, I was driving up to Salt Lake with my daughter Ariana, she's 12, and we were going through my presentation and talking about it, and I said, what do you think? And she said, well, sounds like every other presentation you give, which was kind of disheartening. But I asked her, what do we do in our house to encourage a love of learning? And she thought about it for a minute and said, oh, I think just deciding to homeschool is something that encourages an environment of learning. It's a paradigm shift from we go and we do what the teacher says to what do we need to learn and what do we want to learn. So that's a great step. Another thing we've done to encourage a love of learning is make reading a priority in our home. And I actually have lots of other workshops that are just on reading and making it a priority, and that's like my soapbox. But one of the greatest tips that I've done to make reading a priority is to schedule it into my day. And the reason why I started doing that is because when my third child was born, all of a sudden my older two would always ask about, and I had read to them when they were babies, that was easy, but then when I had three, it was really hard to make time. I would go through the whole day and be like, oh, I didn't read to you, baby, I'm sorry, but when you get bigger, it'll be really great. And I didn't want that to be the case. I wanted to really establish a love of reading with her, and so I scheduled it in. Every time she woke up, we read a book. Every diaper change, we read a book, and every time before I laid her down for a nap, we read. So that got 12, and they were short, but it got 12 or so books in a day. And she's 12 now and absolutely loves reading. Another thing to make reading a priority that I've done, and this is a time sacrifice, but oh my goodness, the results have been amazing. I have a tradition that I read my children out of bed. I go to the first one. We start really early because she likes to get her practicing in before, and she practices for 2.5 hours. So we have to get her practicing in before we start our actual school day and things. So, but I start with her. I read to her for half an hour, and we say morning prayers together. And then I go on to the next child, and we work our way through. But what it does is I never read anything without a pen in my hand. It just doesn't go into my brain unless I have a pen in my, even if I'm not even reading anything or it's a library